Hi, this is Lamberti, and in today's episode of TFR Insights, we have with us once again James Lamberti, CMO of Applitools. James, it's nice to have you here.
It's great to be here, and thanks again. I'm always happy to join and talk a little bit about what we're doing. So thank you.
If I'm not wrong, Applitools recently released a report called Cross-Browser Testing Through Visual AI. Before we started recording, you said that the report is kind of outcome of a hackathon that you guys ran. So I want to understand the whole backstory of this report.
Yeah, thank you. Exactly, we're in the situation where we have to do a lot of education, right? I mean, visual AI is a very new technology. It's kind of cutting edge or next generation technology. And so what we discovered is the best way to help educate developers and engineers is to engage them in something that's fun and gamified. And so we ran a hackathon. We ran a global hackathon. This is our second one. And what we did in this particular hackathon is we set up a modern, responsive e-commerce application, right? Very representative of what any cross-browser testing or cross-environment testing use case would involve. And we issued a challenge to say, hey, do this cross-environment, cross-browser testing using a traditional approach, whatever that is in your world, right? And then repeat that same set of tests, including writing the tests, running the tests, analyzing it, maintaining it, the entire test cycle. Repeat it using visual AI technology. And then what that gave us was, first of all, it was an exciting and fun way to engage the entire community, right? People learned a lot. They got enthusiastic and involved. They talked to each other. Second of all, we were able to quantify or get data underneath that contest that showed, what the results were from a traditional approach versus that same approach using visual AI. And so that really allows us to build up an empirical set of data. And in fact, we got, from this particular study, we got 3,100 hours of actual quality engineering effort. So it's a massive footprint of data that was really underneath all this.
Awesome. Can you also explain what exactly is modern cross-browser testing?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I mean, let me start with, what I mean by traditional and how modern's changing that. And there's basically three fundamental aspects to traditional, right? First of all, if you think about it, going back 10 years even, you would test everything, test every variation, every browser, current version, past version, and you literally would walk through everything. And so that was one common theme. You literally tested everything. That was a mantra, test everything. The second thing is that you mainly did functional testing. So filling out the form, are we getting a proper response? Are we getting the proper error messages if the form isn't completed accurately? So it's really the functional aspects that were the main focus of our testing. We very rarely ever considered the actual rendering and the visual aspects of the test. There wasn't much test coverage there. And then the way we did it technically was we were sequentially testing on real devices, right? So that's the traditional approach. So think about what's changed, right? In a modern era, you have W3C standards. You have WhatWG that is bringing highly consistent experiences to modern browsers. You have modern JavaScript solutions like jQuery and Babel that are smoothing out, right, browser support for a JavaScript API. And a lot of the JavaScript testing is binary, right? So bottom line is browsers are tested to perfection, which means that you just need to test one time on a main browser, call it Chrome or Chromium. And really where the problem lies is in the visual aspects. How does it render? So cross-browser, cross-environment testing is now almost 100% about the visual aspects. So those changes have led to modern cross-browser testing, and things fundamentally change in three ways. One, you run a single functional test on a single browser, and because of browser consistency, that single test will give you 99% coverage across every other browser combination. That helps a lot in how you do things. Second of all, you mainly focus on visual, almost 100%, because the problems with cross-environment testing with responsive applications, multiple devices, is visual in nature, right? It's not functional in nature. So you have to have a technique like visual AI, which recognizes that and gives you really strong, comprehensive visual coverage. And then finally, technically speaking, you're able to test incredibly quickly in parallel, rendering on devices, as opposed to sequentially on real devices. So this slow, flaky, expensive methodology that 90% of people still use is no longer necessary. If you move to a modern approach like we described, you're properly testing things visually with a highly accurate visual AI. You're getting most of your functional tests from just a single browser, one test run. And then because we render in parallel and cache everything using microservices and Docker in a containerized world, it's incredibly fast and incredibly stable. So that is what we mean by cross-browser testing, modern cross-browser testing. Yeah.
Talk about some of the highlights, some of the key findings of this report.
What we learned is a couple things. Number one is the speed at which an engineer can now complete a full test cycle. So when we compare the traditional approach to a modern approach using visual AI, the modern approach with visual AI was 18.2 times faster to complete a full test cycle. And so when we break that down into its individual elements, most of the time savings comes from actually authoring the tests. And a lot also comes from analyzing and reporting. But think about it, we're talking about 1.6 hours using visual AI to do a full test cycle on basically a new candidate with 21 variations of cross-environment testing, right? 7 browser combinations and 3 viewport combinations. So 3 times 7, 21. Using visual AI, it took less than an hour to write it, less than a minute to run it, 10 minutes to analyze it, about 15 minutes to report it, and 6 minutes to maintain it. That, and you get full coverage. In comparison, using traditional approaches, we had people taking 10 to 15 hours to write, as much as 10 minutes to run, which 1 minute versus 10 minutes doesn't sound like a big deal, but when you're in a continuous integration and delivery environment, CI/CD, running in seconds versus running in minutes makes a huge difference. The analysis ability, the reporting ability, and the maintaining it is also super important, and that was radically faster as well. So when we break down where the time went, that's what you'll see in the report.
So when I was going through the report, one thing that I did notice was that where our developer spending, or I would also call it wasting most of their time, because you can use your time to write an application that adds value to your business, or you can do a lot of plumbing that has of course everything adds some value, but sometimes you're wasting time. So can you also talk about, when we do talk about testing and all those things, where do you see developers wasting most of their time?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And going back to what we talked about, the visual AI, this is where, in a modern cross-browser testing approach, visual AI takes on all those rote tasks that are essentially wasted time, that aren't adding value to the quality of the application. The biggest areas, when you think about the full test cycle, were in authoring the tests. And then the second big area was in, probably the next 2 or 3 were analyzing and reporting. But when you think about authoring, we saw anywhere from 10 to 20 hours of time spent authoring using the traditional approach versus just 50 to 60 minutes using visual AI. And then when it came to analysis and reporting, you're talking 10, 15 minutes using visual AI versus 3, 4, 5 hours for reporting, another 3, 4, 5 hours for analysis. So this combination of activities really is what drags down the time right? For the engineer. And also, in the real world, you just don't have that amount of time. And so what happens is your coverage suffers, and of course, late production bugs escape. So that's the great thing about what we learned is you can do everything you need to do, full coverage, very, very quickly, right? With visual AI. Whereas in a traditional setting, you're really stuck, and either you're very slow and you can't really release as fast as you want, or you continue to release at a high pace, but quality suffers. So you pay somewhere. And really, we wanted to show through this data and through this hackathon that you no longer needed to make that sacrifice, essentially. You could get maximum coverage and maximum quality and still be testing at the speed of CI/CD.
James, before we wrap this up, I also want to, quickly, if you can give us a summary that we talked about problems mostly. We did talk about visual AI, but can you also talk about what kind of, in general, what kind of solutions Applitools has there to make developers' life easier?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. This capability from us is built into everything that a developer or engineer is using today. So the great thing about what we've done is we've essentially created a library of 50 or 60 SDKs, right? So anything a modern developer would want to use, from Storybook component level testing to Cypress, which of course is a really exciting new technology we're very supportive of, to Selenium, to Appium and mobile, and again, 50 or 60 other SDKs in any language they want, right? So whether it's Java, JavaScript, Ruby, Python, etc. Additionally, we easily plug into their existing stack, right? So if you're using Jira, no problem. We have a Jira plugin, right? When you find something, you automatically feed it into Jira. You get a screenshot of what you're seeing. You get the ability to see the code or the element on the application causing the problem. And we also have something called UI version control, where you're able to know which PR request in your Git repo it's associated with. And finding there's auto maintenance capabilities as well. So all of this is built up to allow a modern developer to basically write feature code, but be testing incredibly quickly at scale with complete coverage, and be able to easily diagnose, fix issues as they go, right? So that's really the power of it. And people can go. We have a free forever account. Anyone listening right now from your audience can go and sign up and learn how to do this.
Awesome. James, thank you so much for not only talking about the hackathon, also report, but also in general, the work that Applitools is doing to make things easier for developers. And as usual, I will look forward to talk to you again. Thank you.
All right. Thanks very much. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. Bye now.